we're going to be great. Thank you, Kate. Um, Today, we are going to be talking about household food insecurity. This is something actually that we've been hearing quite a bit from the various teams that we're working with, as well as kind of generally as we're having conversations. And we learned through Callie Chung with Nutrition Services that Alberta Health Services has been doing some work and really gathering some great resources in this area. So we thought we're going to tap into Callie and share a great discussion this morning with her. Then we'll go over some resources and FYIs. And then our next meeting is March 26th, and that will be a presentation on Team CarePal. So I will just hand this over to Callie now.
Wonderful. Just give me 1 minute here.
You bet.
That's screen 2. Okay, I'm hoping everyone can see my screen, and I'm going to start presentation.
Yes, I can see it there, Callie.
Wonderful. So just want to thank you for the invitation to have a conversation with the group this morning. I'm joining you from Calgary, Treaty 7 territory, home to the Siksika, Piikani, Kainai, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nations within Alberta. I feel very blessed every day to be part of this community. I will share a little bit about you, will share a little bit about myself to start. I am a public health dietitian. I work in the Department of Nutrition Services. I am one of, I think, 50 dietitians that might be working in different areas of the communities in different areas of Alberta. Some of which are just really focused on community work, some who may have some uplanded role, especially those who are working in the north. So there's some clinical and public health nutrition. But yeah, I'm a dietitian, but I also have personal experiences that really shape and enriches the way I practice. I'm a mother of 2, very busy most days in the morning. I am a first generation immigrant. I immigrated to Canada with my family as a child. I've lived in cities most of my life, but have had the opportunity to work in rural communities in southern Alberta. Our conversation today will start with building a common understanding of household food insecurity and its effects, and then talk about some ideas on ways communities can help. Now, I've attended, I think, 2 past partners meeting, and I know that there's so much innovation, resourcefulness, and wisdom in this room. So I'll be inviting you to share your experience and ideas on how we can support individuals at a community level throughout the session, and also just hearing what you've been observing. So in addition to the facilitators, I've also asked my colleague Shauna McGann here to help me with facilitating some of the discussion today. She has participated with communities who are working towards financial well-being using an asset-based community development lens. So I'm really glad that she's agreed to help me and also weave in some ideas as we go through the discussion based on what she's heard or as she's working alongside the communities. So what is household food insecurity? And I think it's important for us just to have a common understanding of, or shared understanding of what that is as we talk about different types of actions. I'll start with sharing the story of Angela. And this is a story from the Reducing Impact of Financial Strain project. And as I tell you about Angela, I like you to think about how her story may compare to what you're noticing in your community and the factors that might be contributing to your experience of household food insecurity. So Angela is struggling to make ends meet. She lives with her husband and granddaughter who has fetal alcohol syndrome disorder. She supports her daughter who struggles with anxiety and lives in the community. She has fibromyalgia and does not work. Her husband is working, but have not been able to work in the last few months because of his health. He is not able to take the medication he needs for his diabetes and heart failure issues because they couldn't afford to buy them. Angela is feeling stressed as she's trying to manage the bills that come in each month. And she's doing her best to find ways to get food on the table. She's experiencing household food insecurity. Angela is resourceful and a strong advocate and a support system for her family. She's doing and she's trying her best to make ends meet. So from Angela's story, what we're seeing is that household food insecurity is more than food. It's a marker of a larger struggle of not being able to afford basic needs and withstand sudden income shocks like loss of job or rising food prices. When the money that someone has is not enough to cover all their expenses, it's often the food budget that gets cut first. A common misconception about household food insecurity is that education on how to budget or how to shop better will help individuals eat better. But research has found that there's actually no difference in food skills between those who experience household food insecurity and those who don't. In fact, those who experience household food insecurity are more likely to have a food budget and be more aware of and use thrifty shopping practices while they can. So because they have to. Addressing household food insecurity needs to tackle the underlying cause of financial strain and inequities. And I'm sure you're here today because you're hearing more about stories about household food insecurity, and it's a growing issue. I think if we looked at the last 5 years, the rates have just increased. I'm really curious now if we can just open it up. Feel free to share via chat or come off mute. I'm just curious about what you've been noticing in your community and who might be affected.
We have
Good morning.
Oh, go ahead. Go right
I was
ahead.
just going to say one of the groups or the sectors we're seeing an impact in is our seniors population, because they are on obviously limited income, especially if they are retired. So we are seeing an increase that way as well.
Mhm.
There's a couple of messages there too, Callie, for people
yes.
saying they're seeing increased food bank usage.
Mhm.
And Sharon had shared, Anderson had shared that, she noticed Angela is a family caregiver. Half of family caregivers say they experience financial difficulties as a result of caregiving.
Mhm.
And Liz is saying that this is a familiar story that they're hearing families like of this story from families in primary care regularly. A significant increase in food bank usage. And more folks with full-time jobs, but the ends just don't meet there.
Mhm.
Increase in low-income earners being able to manage expenses. Post-secondary students, and young adults are starting to eat only once a day or are choosing unhealthy foods, so limiting how much food they're eating. Lower quality food because sometimes it's cheaper, and that the COVID related funding has left, so community serving organizations are struggling more than ever to help fill the gaps with emergency food, tax clinics, access to support workers. I was reading in the paper today that the executive from GoFundMe was saying that there was, I think they said, nearly $300,000 raised for food and housing expenses through various GoFundMe funds there in Canada. I think it was, yeah. And then, sorry, just see here from Sharon also that her sister is the ED of the program for adult learning in Lac La Biche, and they have this, I think it's Stone Soup Good Rescue. People with low literacy are certainly at risk of food insecurity. Thanks for the sharing in the chat box, everyone.
Thanks for sharing. And really excellent points. I think just more and more people who are maybe in the cusp of experiencing it, household food insecurity, actually experiencing food insecurity now or experiencing at a more severe level. I definitely hear just the stories of it growing in the community. And I'm just on Facebook every day. And then I see these just posts of, families just, asking for help. And it's, really interesting. Yeah, food bank usage has gone up. And it's is really interesting that, the food bank usage, there is a relationship between that and the, the experience of household food insecurity. But if, just from research, not everyone who experiences household food insecurity uses food banks. A lot of them will do, um, juggle bills, go to ask family for help, etc., before they go to the food bank. So I think for those who are using a food bank, it's really just, yeah, showing the severity of the situation. So I'll go through two slides that really touches on some of the thoughts that's shared by the group, and continues to grow our shared understanding of experience about household food insecurity. And I think it's really important to, better understand the experience, or what it is, because it can help shape the actions that we take. Food insecurity is a sign of inequities. If you're looking at groups that are on this slide here, those that face the most social and economic disadvantages are at highest risk of household food insecurity and poverty. So, some people mentioned about, multiple jobs and but still not making it. Absolutely. Like, while low income is the biggest predictor of household food insecurity, unemployment itself is actually not a main driver. About 70%, so 7 in 10 households that experience household food insecurity in Alberta rely on wages and salary as a main source of income. So there's someone in the house that's working, but it may be that just having a full-time job or even multiple jobs. We all know people who work full time and then, working additional after out, like in the evenings or on the weekends. But with all of that, it doesn't mean that we might have enough to earn enough money to pay for basic things like food and housing. Someone mentioned about post-secondary students, and I think we would all agree that having a university degree or a college degree can help getting a more stable and well-paying job. But that path to education can be challenging and expensive. Firstly, if we're looking at just one of the groups on the slide, refugees or newcomers, getting credentials recognized from foreign countries are extremely very difficult. And for students who's already in post-secondary, like I just looked it up the other day, and it costs almost like $30,000 just tuition for a 4-year degree. $30,000. It blew my mind. And and just thinking about just that challenge, right? Even if you have student loans, there's just a lot of burden in terms of that financial strain that's impacting a person even as they're getting their education. So I raise this because we talk about household food insecurity and the underlying issues of financial strain. And it's also important, just as we can, just start thinking about what are some of those underlying causes and what are those opportunities in the community to reduce these barriers, these social economic challenges that make it hard to get ahead. And I'll encourage you to just continue to reflect on that, as we kind of brainstorm about different types of actions to take.
There's just a comment in here, Callie, just wanted to share just the
Mhm.
working poor are a tricky group. Those who have jobs and incomes that are too high to access some of the resources out there and who feel a stigma about accessing the food
Mhm.
bank, but who are barely making enough money to get by. And food is the one area they can modify as opposed to rent or childcare. So
Absolutely. That's really hard. Um, yeah, so it's almost always some of my presentation I show like the iceberg, and food is really the tip of the food insecurity as being tip of the iceberg almost, right? Like, or you do everything out, or maybe I don't know, it's just this, there's just so much. um and household food insecurity really is just a symptom, and it's the thing that people adjust, yeah, firstly adjust as they're facing hardship. And as we're talking about food insecurity, we need to talk about the different levels, because there's actually a range of experience with household food insecurity. Um, we talked about food banks, and a lot of times when people think about food insecurity, they imagine, we might imagine bare cupboards, empty fridges, etc. But the experience of household food insecurity can actually range. It can range from just starting from worrying about having enough money to buy food, to compromises to what kind of food someone buys. These are things that people have mentioned, and as we're doing our sharing, to actually skipping meals. And any experience of household food insecurity, including just starting from feeling worried, has tremendous impact on psychological, social, and physical health. And we'll touch on these effects in the next couple of slides. We'll talk about health. So studies that have shown, looked at the experience of household food insecurity has found that adults living in food insecure households are more vulnerable to diseases, injuries, depression, and anxiety disorders. And it's not hard to understand why when you think about all the stress that comes with experiencing food insecurity, financial strain. Individuals who experience household food insecurity are also more likely to be diagnosed with multiple chronic conditions. Among adults who die prematurely, those experiencing severe food insecurity died on average 9 years earlier than their food secure counterparts. In the very bottom of this slide, you can see a link, and we'll share these slides a little bit later, but it takes you to this website called Proof, which is a multidisciplinary research group that focuses on household food insecurity. There's a wealth of information about what the situation is in Canada, what the current rates are, and what may be able to help with food insecurity. So I encourage you to go and take it, as you have time, take a look at that website for some information. Now, I've talked about the physical part of the health, right? But it also goes beyond health into well-being. Take a look at these two quotes. The impact goes beyond physical health. It also affects social belonging, inclusion, relationships, and a sense of meaning or purpose in life. These statistics are from the Beyond Hunger, the Hidden Impacts of Food Insecurity report by the Community Food Center of Canada. And they share really a lot of powerful stories of the impact of food insecurity on a person and also the community. So we talked a little bit about the blue, but now I wanted to maybe focus your attention to the orange, or yellowy orange. On the impact of on the community, because I feel like sometimes it's not often talked about or looked at. We focus very much on the individuals, and I'd be curious about what are some of those impacts that you're noticing in your community, because as a sign of people struggling to meet ends meet.
Yeah, in the chat there, Lisa was just saying, believing that crime rates increase with that. It does make me think about, what we're hearing, the loneliness epidemic. And if this is one of the factors that really, overlaps with that, right? And exacerbates that stigma part of it. I think we're hearing here also folks are feeling stress and as a result taking more time off work. So that absentee and a feeling of shame, really stress felt through the whole community. then that withdraw from connection with others, become socially isolated to avoid disclosure and stigma of struggling with financial insecurity, increase in hospitalization and healthcare needs, makes them feel disconnected from their community. I think often that connection within your community helps you find resources. So then if you don't have that, then you're even what might be available becomes harder to know about.
And that stress, yeah, just this is alone. It's lonely.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just this, continued isolation because you don't want that stigma, but then you're losing out on then there's less connection, and it's, less social support. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. I just added one in here. Always having to ask is soul destroying. Like the Dickens
Mhm.
child, please, sir, can I have a cookie? Right? It's that power differential, isn't it? You're always the one asking, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Just
perhaps
thinking as well of
yeah,
oh, sorry, Callie,
go on. Yes.
of the impacts in the schools, when kids aren't having that, the availability of food in homes. Yeah, there you go, Katie, on the same
Yeah.
Sorry, we
wavelength
were
there.
thinking the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's maybe we can just shift to the idea generation part, on
Mhm.
how communities may help. I bring some ideas today, but yeah, really looking forward just to hearing what you've done in your community, and what is successful. I think it's not household food insecurity is not something that any of us could solve on our own. I really do. I mean, we need to work together, and it's just. And part of that could be just starting with getting to know what each other, different communities or different groups within the community are doing, and thinking about what can be built on to help reduce the burden of household food insecurity. So again, like these are some ideas on actions that may have reduced the burden of household food insecurity. These are collected from what communities or different organizations in Alberta or other parts of Canada have done, or internationally. And again, the experience of household food insecurity is very unique for each individual, for each community. I would encourage you to look at ways to include individuals who are experiencing household food insecurity and financial strain as you're as part of that conversation, as you're planning for actions. I know it's not easy or challenging, but yeah, potentially there are ways um, to do that, because by learning about their realities and what their goals are, not automatically, and thinking about all the underlying challenges, the experience, can maybe help, can be used to guide the types of actions that the community can take together. And again, it's beyond just food. Oops, sorry. Let me just see what other what other things I have to plan out. So these are 4 boxes, and they're kind of 4 groups of ideas. It's not meant like, if you're looking at it, it's not meant to be like stepwise progression of actions. It's really based on, these are groupings, and you just, I think communities always do where opportunities exist. The arrow on the bottom means that the ideas, as you're shifting right, have the more potential to make a greater impact on dignity, equity, and inclusion. I think, taking a step where there is opportunity would be a great place to start. But it's always nice just to start thinking about, that, if you look at the far right, what are some of those underlying barriers that kind of can continue to increase the rate of household food insecurity in our community. So let me just do an overview of these 4 boxes, and then we'll go to the next slide, which kind of provides you with a little bit more examples. Someone earlier talked about, people not wanting to come forward for help, right? Because of that shame and stigma that's often, accompanies household food insecurity. So one of the ways is, first group of idea would be, what are some of the ways to reduce that stigma? and increase that connection and inclusion for individuals in the community. The second is if there are charitable programs, what are some ways to make them more, less stigma, but also looking at ways to make them a little bit more income based. We hear that food-based usage is increasing, but there are a lot of stigma from just lining up to be going to food bank and asking for help, or being limited in terms of what being able to meet, whether thinking about food hampers, whether or not that meets a family's diverse dietary or cultural needs. So thinking about what are some ways to maybe shift them a little bit to make them more income based, to give people more choice. The third box is about helping connect individuals to income supports and benefits that they're eligible for. And the reason I think someone mentioned literacy. If I'm thinking about applying for benefit programs online, there's a lot that goes into it, right? You need to have language proficiency, you need to be tech savvy, you need to actually have a computer and reliable internet connection. There's a lot that may be required for some that to be able to access the income supports and benefits. And then also just thinking about that state of just stress and being overwhelmed, that could make it hard to apply or know about all the income supports and benefits that might be available for someone. So this box is about looking at ways to help people navigate or apply where possible. And then lastly, we talked about the underlying challenges or barriers, and really looking at opportunities where is possible within the communities, give people the social and economic resource they need to be healthy. And we talked about income, education, employment, just as a place to start. So I'm going to shift in my next slide, and then we're going to ask you to interact with us a little bit differently. So these are some ideas for each of the groups or strategies that I talked about. As you're going through the list, I would love to just kind of hear or have you think about what already exists in your community, what already going well, what you're already doing. I'm going to ask you to go to the annotate button. So the instructions are, if you click on, oh, Helen, can you just help me?
You bet. So if you at the top of your screen, you'll see a bar, and one half is green and then the other half is black with view options on it. So if you click view options, I'm trying to do it as there we go. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 down is annotate. So click on that annotate. And on the left-hand side, when you're facing your screen, there's a bar and there's a check mark. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 down. And if you click on that, then when you move your mouse to beside a bullet point and click, then a check mark should come up. I'll do a sample one. There we go. Just came up there.
So I encourage you to
Callie,
yeah.
Sorry, Callie, I was just going to let you know we got lots of good discussion going on in the chat box too around all of these things. So
great. Yeah. Just give people a few minutes to click on them. And I see that. So where are you working on some of these areas?
Kelly, just to clarify, so they're putting check marks on examples that they're working on?
That they've worked on.
Okay.
Communities are doing a lot of things to reduce stigma, increase inclusion. And I just remember that comment earlier from this session where, people are, what do you do when people are just, reluctant to talk about it? I think it's, it's not one thing that we can do, but just really, I think what we can do like more day to day where it's possible to just normalize talking about financial strain. If we're, like, I'm just thinking about, ideas of presentation, when we're talking about cooking, like, yeah, as a service agency, asking about it and just say, hey, there's a lot of people who are experiencing household food insecurity and financial strain. It's growing. And this is something that I asked to see if it could be something I can support with you with, or help me understand that as part of your care plan. Can I ask you about financial strain? So just kind of more normalizing that it's not just an individual's experience, but a group experience would be helpful. Yeah, looking at ways, like, for example, someone mentioned about schools. I don't know exact comments, but schools are trying it, and they're seeing just the results. And a lot of times, there's been this talk about, food programs, for universal school policies, and that's really great. But I think, if you are offering food in the community, just look at ways to see if it can be offered to everybody. Because if it's only offered to a subset, and kids are very smart. They know who's accessing certain programs and why. I think if it's and that burden, or that perceived stigma of food insecurity or accessing those programs because you don't have enough food at home or something like that, or a good variety, could actually reduce participation of students who need it. And so just, this is a school example, just, however we can make it more inclusive would be better. And I've heard a couple of stories from communities who do like community dinners, so that everyone can come, people can contribute what they want to it, just to foster that sense of belonging and inclusion. So I'm taking a look at the check marks now, and I just see that there's a lot of check marks everywhere. And and I think communities are doing a lot, and trying to just, help each one another. Helene, I'm going to just ask you to take a look at the chat and see if there's any comments that you want to share.
Oh my goodness, we've got tons of comments in the in the chat there, which is great. There, I'll go back up. What as you were talking about children and being smart, I think it was Sharon who put in there about how her mom was a teacher in Thorhild and would, give a sandwich to a child almost every day. But what she was commenting on was that kids look at each other's lunches and know who's got a good lunch, who's got the coveted things, but they're learning kind of that disparity like really early on within there. So I think there was a number of comments around wanting, it'd be great to see more community kitchens, community gardens, that connecting part of it. Social workers within primary care networks doing a lot of that connecting for people, for the folks that come in there. And Terry was sharing that they had 2 free batch cooking classes where folks were able to learn how to cook in big batches with healthy ingredients. And they had like 28 people attend that. So and so that, the ability to buy a lot of food, when you bring people together, you're able to do that. But on your own, it's hard to buy enough food to do a big batch cooking like that. So again, number of comments around lunches for kids, having a stash of granola bars also for those long rides home or just growth spurt. And one of the comments here was just feeling distressed about a food bank in Westlock, that people are needing to wait outside, that's public and can be demeaning that way. Sure. That there's the Soup for Soul in Okotoks also. And so ingredients for healthy cognition, and that soup can be fairly inexpensive. Newcomers to Canada and not knowing what foods are healthy to substitute at a cheaper cost. Creating community neighborhood hubs where people can donate and resource food staples within their own neighborhood, social circles, versus more formalized food banks, which I think really relates to that, newcomers kind of idea too, close to where they are. Stephanie talking about pushing for food charters at the local level that look at varying food systems across the municipality, deserts, food placement, food support systems, food education, kind of that whole, looking at the whole thing together at once. And she's got a link in there. And then that breakfast programs in schools are done universally now, so that kids aren't singled out. And that in Westlock, there's a weekend program where anyone can access the resource. You pay at the beginning of the month, and then at the end of the month, you get your box or two. There's one for meat and one for veggies and fruits. Anyone can participate, and there's about 80 families in Westlock. Then just it's a bulk buying program. Terry was adding to that. Oh yeah, and another one about the weekend program there. If anyone has a link that they want to pop into the chat box about it, then that would be great. We can share that out with our resources.
Those are great ideas.
Yeah.
Sorry, keep on going if there's more.
Yeah, there's more. They keep coming in there, so that's great. There's a leftovers program that reclaims food at the end of the day from food providers, and I guess redistributes it then. A perishable box available weekly at Food Bank, which is open to anyone. And then Cindy was sharing N-Step is a great program for organizations to leverage. So I'm not sure I know that much about that one. If you wanted to speak to that, Cindy, or put more in the chat box. And then Kristen Ward is talking about, I always wondered about a volunteer run program that many of my friends support called Brown Bagging for Calgary Kids. And if the visual of brown bags increases the stigma for those kids who get lunches 3 days a week. So universal breakfast and lunch programs. Yeah, it's interesting, right? People are doing it to support people, but needing to think about that stigma part. Oh, thanks, Terry, for the weekend link there. Calgary has a good food box for discounted purchase. And there's a Too Good To Go app, reduces food waste and cost, also lower, but may not always be healthy. There from Deborah.
Yeah, I just want to pick up that comment, Helen, about people wanting to help. And I think like my gut instincts like, oh, feed, right, and give food. But then there is a lot of stigma that is attached to it. In terms of kids just know who's in each other's lunches and who's getting what and why. People waiting out. I think the examples about people waiting outside the food bank, and just like kind of wait that feeling of waiting in line, and people seeing it's hard. It's really hard. We talk about and there's a lot of just like with food program like rescue food programs and I think it's we're doing what we can. I think but then also just I think we need to be and that's one way of kind of providing food for those who need it. But I think what I would encourage is just to really reflect on for things that we're already things that we're already doing. What are some ways to make it more reduce stigma, make it more dignified? If it's food hampers. I think a shift to more grocery gift cards can give people actually doesn't take as much. It's less administration. There's actually a really good a program in Calgary called I Can for Kids, and they've kind of and I think there's a few in other communities as well that's shifted from a hamper to a gift card program because because one there's then people aren't needing to go to like a place like a food bank to get the food. They can it's a little less anonymous, right? Because a gift card is just something you can go at a grocery store. You can get the food that you need when your family needs it. That meets your cultural and dietary preference. So there's there's benefits from shifting to more of a gift card or income-based type of program. But just even going with the food, because we all love food and we love sharing in different ways, where we can. Make it more like open for everybody. Think about what are some ways, what is that, maybe what was that process like. In the second bullet here is about what's that is there an intake process? Do we ask questions? And I think the reality is that it's these charitable programs are stretched out and they're maxed out, and that they are trying to kind of help those who need it the most. And then that's where I can see where questions about, income, etc., can come in. But I mean, that is quite an intrusive process. So someone's standing in line in the food bank and being asked but an income. So I don't know what the solution is, but I think, within all of our practice, myself included, just trying to think about ways to normalize the experience. Try and see if there's ways to reduce unintended stigma. I mean, we don't intend to, but what are some unintended ways that we might be creating that, or what are some ways to make it a little bit, our services a little bit more accessible and inclusive?
Yeah, there's a couple of comments in here, and one I think in terms of that accessibility is that the barriers to accessing food is transportation. In Edmonton, if you use DATS, you can only bring on whatever fits on your lap, usually 1 or 2 bags there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then thinking about those who experience, I think when I look at different types of studies, there's on Proof actually, they're just saying like a quarter of people who access food hampers or food banks, only a quarter of people who experience household food insecurity access food hampers or food banks, and there's a number of reasons. Firstly, because of perceived stigma. And secondly, transportation's another big one. And then thirdly, maybe not having the foods that they need. For example, if they have celiac disease and not having gluten-free foods, or if they have cultural needs, not having like foods like that meets their cultural practices. So yeah, there's just go on, Helen.
Sorry, I just see that Glenda has her hand up there.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I came off mute because this is too long to type. Sorry.
You
But
bet. No, great.
one thing I was, I was thinking of, and something that my husband and I practice, is we still shop at Costco, and it's just he and I, because you can buy, often larger quantities of macaroni, for example, than he and I might use, but it's less than buying a small bag at the local store, right? I think we can all relate to that. So when we do that, then we always have this overage, and we keep a box of things that, is going to be overage. We're never going to use it within the expiry, and we know of a couple of families who are struggling. And so rather than saying, hey, we know you're struggling and here's something, we'll say, you know what, we've got some extra macaroni. We're never getting through that in our lifetime. Would you guys be able to use it? And it takes away that stigma of, it kind of makes it more less. Do you know what I'm saying? We're
Absolutely.
recognizing that they're struggling, but it's not always in their face. We know you're struggling, always bringing that up. Just saying, hey, we've got some extra, could you guys use it? And sometimes they'll say, oh no, we don't prefer that stuff or whatever, and then that leaves a choice. So yeah, I encourage you, just keep a box of overage stuff in your house, and then when you bump to somebody when you're shoveling or something, say, hey, they may or may not disclose that they're having issues, but they may take the food, and it's just a way to build community too.
Yeah.
Far too long to
It's
type,
definitely just the
Helen.
way we frame it, right? It's just the way we frame it, or things are presented. And yeah, think about these little ways, I think could make things connecting more welcoming.
Yeah, I think too, it just because part of what you're describing, Glenda, is that they're actually helping you, is the way that you framed it, right? You've got this, and so they're able to make a contribution, in terms of that conversation. And I think that, to me, just goes right to the heart of that asset-based community development, those community connections, right? So when you've developed those relationships, then those kind of relationships can help each other with different needs, but everybody's contributing, as opposed to one always being the recipient with it. Sean, I see you've come off of mute there. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, this is such a rich conversation. It kind of reminds me of, when we were working with communities, and I had an opportunity to join many of the community conversations, and just kind of observe and listen. And so many great comments in the chat, but really highlights that this is complex, and we can't treat it as a very simple, okay, we need to do this. And I think is the power of, what all the work that that your teams are doing in community, with the connected people, connected communities. That's really the solution, is bringing people together. For example, I remember in one community, they invited whoever wants to talk and work towards addressing financial strain. They had all kinds of different community members and partners join and feel really passionate. I remember one of the comments of, kind of where would you like to be in 2 years as a community? And, so financial strain, they might talk about, we want to be more financially, strong. But one of the comments stood out was, we want a more unified to do with, what does that have to do with, financial strain? But, you're kind of highlighting all those points. One of the exercises they did was let's look at all our assets and all our services in our community. And I remember before the meeting started, someone said, well, we're a small community. We have very little. We don't have much in our community. And then another said, we've got some things, but people aren't aware of it. And so we need to raise awareness. So kind of just thinking about, one, we need more services, or two, we need more. And then they populated the room with, wow, we have so many services. We had no idea. But then they started talking about things that you're highlighting. People have to line up down Main Street to go to the food bank. People feel embarrassed about going to the food bank. Our community consists of a lot of farmers who are strong, independent, and value looking after family. And so that sort of value system didn't align with taking, quote, handouts. And so how do you look at kind of that whole picture, leveraging, kind of their values, their belief systems, and kind of, the stigma? How do you kind of address that as a community? And part of it was, coming together and talking about it and exploring all the different opportunities and kind of the complex pieces of it. So understanding experiences of the community and what's important to them, I think, is another really important piece that Callie really nicely highlighted.
Yeah. And I think it's, if we're thinking about assets, right? It's really about what's working well. And Helen, I like how you just brought up, it's like, what does everyone have to contribute, including those who are experiencing financial strain? And I think part of building, reducing stigma, increasing inclusion, enhancing dignity is just to recognize that everyone has gifts and talents and resources to share. It may not be material, but I think it will just kind of come out as we start to build more connections and work with each other.
Yeah, and really focusing on that, what's strong, not what's wrong. I think people can get so overwhelmed with all the problems, and focusing on those gifts and strengths of the community, really leveraging that. I like that.
Yeah.
I have to, oh, sorry, it's Lisa here. I just have to agree with Shauna on that, the town, looking at where you would like to be as a community is really important, because I think that we can all work together and actually look at some of those challenges that there are. And for example, in Westlock, we received a very generous donation from a couple that passed away, and that a community foundation was created for Westlock, and they have board members to determine, a wide vast array of individuals that are working together to see what that community needs and how that money can be used, and actually go and actually use some grants and actually use that money to sustain Westlock for many, many years to come in regards to what that community needs. So fortunate, we were very fortunate that way, but I think it can be built in other communities as well, and what is really needed to help out that community. So, yeah.
there's a nice kind of building on that, Lisa, less around a foundation, but just Jen was sharing about some things, about a number of things in her community at using Facebook to kind of to bring together those overages that Glenda had talked about, that there's a community-based pantry open anytime for those who need, and I guess for anyone if it's open, and then the community garden, and just that community driven is a great contribution. Linda had just added about, there's larger kind of, I think, global issues here in terms of our population increasing, farmers being hampered, and about growing food and the tax rates for that. So some of that, being able to produce things locally could help with that. Then about Meals on Wheels delivering for free to client stores, and having sliding scales there. Yeah. I'm just looking at the time also. Callie, we're already at
We're almost pretty
10:25.
much, actually, this is
Woo!
my last slide, but I think just that last point about it can feel overwhelming when we're thinking about, just about just all the barriers that exist that actually got people to experiencing financial strain and household food insecurity. I don't think many of us are ready just to jump to that stage, but I think this is just part of the conversation. Starting conversations, starting with small things that we can build on that's working really well. And then continue to think about what are some ways to bring down those barriers so that our neighbors, their children can thrive just moving forward. So we've done this piece. Let me see if I can clear my I don't know if I can on the spot, so I'm just, for the sake of time, I'm just going to keep continuing and just share some resources if that's okay.
And they'll be in the slides that we send out also.
Yeah, so we have our household, like ahs.ca, household food and security community page. Just a list of resources about household food and security actions. We do on the right here on the slide, we do have a community household food and security community action guide coming out. And what you've heard today in that table is actually in excerpts. You got a preview of what might be in there. And it's just a guide, just a way to maybe start generating some discussions about what communities can do. I also want to highlight the Building Financial Wellbeing Community Toolkit. It gives a lot of different ideas on how to, and stories of communities that have taken action to build that financial well-being. I did have a little bit of a clip, but I won't show it in the interest of time. I will just, just kind of close it to see if there's close off my presentation and see if there's any questions. I'll stop share.
And got some resources in the chat box, and Trina just talking about using community health navigators and social workers through the primary care network to help people connect. And yeah, Shauna is putting some other resources within there that you had just shared there, the links to them. Sharon Cornelius, did you want to share something? I just see you here. Nope. Okay. Sorry. Just saw your face come up. Yeah. Great. And we always try to take screenshots of the resources. So we will put as many of these as we've captured into the resources as we go forward. I think I'll just share our other resources. There, if you can see my screen there. So just a couple of things coming up, and like I said, we'll add these resources in when we send out the slide deck. So there's a webinar series, Promising Practices to Enable Aging in Place. The first one is on February 28th, but there are 2 more after that. And then Community Forum, Enhancing Individual Wellbeing in Diverse Communities, from Intention to Action for Inclusive Living, put on by Alberta Association on Gerontology. And Shauna, I think you were going to put another kind of a collective impact resource in the chat there. Great. So this is our website. And I guess this is we wanted to share one more thing with the group just before we sign off, and this is a surprise for Sharon, but Sharon is moving on to has moved to Saskatoon, and so this is her last week with us, and just wanting to say thank you to her for all her great work and support that she's given our team and the communities. So just wanted to make sure we acknowledge that in the meeting here. Any other questions in our last few seconds? Yeah, we will send out the slides and links. Yep. So anybody who attended here. Yeah.
I put it in the chat. But just to reintroduce myself again, folks, I'm representing Healthy Aging Alberta and the Core Alberta platform. And just so you're aware, there's also a food insecurity group in the Core Alberta platform. So if this topic is really of interest to you and stimulated some thoughts, please join the group, and we can share these resources in that group and continue some of this valuable conversation there.
Great. Thank you for that, Stephanie. Great. Well, wishing everybody a great rest of your week, and thanks so much for the great interaction today. It was really a rich discussion.